Bears making a decision for their head coaching position. Go ahead, Adam.
The head coaching hiring cycle is moving rapidly, Laura. The Chicago Bears are hiring former Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson as their new head coach, marrying him to Caleb Williams in the hopes that Caleb Williams can become the quarterback they expected him to be when they selected him with the #1 overall pick. Ben Johnson was obviously one of the leading candidates in this coaching cycle. He was always going to get a job after passing up head coaching opportunities in each of the previous 2 years in Chicago. Have been working on him privately for the last couple of weeks. Finally, after Detroit lost on Saturday night, that enabled them to move into action and to get a deal done before the Las Vegas Raiders or Jacksonville Jaguars could go ahead and hire Ben Johnson. Johnson already has been working on a star-studded assistant coaching staff to bring with him to Chicago, and the leading candidate to become his defensive coordinator is the former Saints head coach, Dennis Allen. They'll have to go through a process, but in the end, I will not be surprised if Dennis Allen becomes the defensive coordinator in Chicago. And right now, the head coaching hiring cycle has moved into overdrive. On Tuesday, the Jets are supposed to speak to Aaron Glenn and interview Lance Newmark, the Commanders' assistant GM, for their general manager job. Both men work together in Detroit. That could be a potential pairing, but the Saints also are interested in Aaron Glenn as well. He will be the next coordinator to leave Detroit following Ben Johnson. The question is whether it will be for the New York Jets or New Orleans Saints head coaching job. And while all this head coaching news was also coming down, Lou Anarumo, the former defensive coordinator in Cincinnati, is taking the job as the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. So to bring it all together, Ben Johnson is on his way to Chicago. Dennis Allen soon could be following. Aaron Glenn has visits set up with the Jets and Saints, and the head coach hiring cycle is moving in rapid speed right now, Laura.
It really started going there. Adam, thanks for all the latest, the breaking news. We'll continue with Adam throughout this hour as we welcome you to a brand new hour of NFL Live. Dan Orlovsky, Mina, Marcus Spears. And let's start right with this latest news. Ben Johnson, the head coach with the Bears. Dan, priority #1 is getting quarterback Caleb Williams in a better spot. What does he need to do to work with Caleb?
Well, #1, Caleb's going to have to build the timing and rhythm of the pass game as the foundation of the quarterback he's going to be in the future. So a couple things. #1, Caleb did not run any play action really last year. I mean, he was 29th out of 32 quarterbacks when it comes to the utilization of play action, 19%. Okay, so compare that to Ben Johnson. Detroit ran play action about as much as anybody in the NFL. I think the second thing is, what that did was that really allowed quarterback Jared Goff to very rarely have to deal with muddy pockets and sacks. That is something that Caleb dealt with the last year. It was bad on the offensive line. It was bad schematically. It was also bad by the player in the avoidance of that. So can he use more play action to build in the timing of the rhythm, get the quarterback to be better at avoiding some of those catastrophic sacks, while also, and if we want to be honest, building more accuracy within his game. Caleb has way too many peaks and valleys of accuracy. Sometimes he makes some ridiculous throws, and then sometimes he misses throws that for a young man as talented as he shouldn't. I think those are the starting points for Ben Johnson.
Yeah, when you think about the work that Ben did with Jared Goff in that offense, so much of it flows from the run game. You talked about the play-action pass, which, of course, is Goff's strength. It's been a strength for a while. But you've really felt him becoming a more confident quarterback because the run game was so good. And the run game was good because of the scheme, but also because of the offensive line. That offensive line is not coming with Ben Johnson. So I think something that's going to be interesting this season is how, as the new head coach, he puts his stamp on building that offensive line. It was already going to be something I think we expected Chicago to add to, whether it's in free agency or the draft. But now that they've gone and hired Johnson, I think even more so, it becomes a priority for this organization. And I'm excited to see how they proceed because I think it's the right way to go.
Mina, I love that you brought that up as far as the offensive line. I say it's a saying I say all the time. Most of those great players and great coaches, they banners are hanging up in stadiums together, and you got to get that part right. You think about the organizations and the franchises right now that are having success. It feels like a lot of alignment when it comes from the GM to the head coach down to the quarterback. And that's what you're trying to accomplish. If you're Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson, philosophically, what is our identity as an organization? You think about Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, feel like that's great synergy. You think about McVay, you think about Kansas City with Andy Reid, and you think about all of these teams that we see having a tremendous amount of success where their quarterback is the central focus of the conversation that we have with these teams. It is about team building more so than, like, there has to be a belief with Ben Johnson that he can get Caleb Williams to play well. I don't believe that this was Ben Johnson's only head coaching opportunity. There's an excitement that he's going to take into Chicago, but that excitement has to be built between the GM, the head coach, and building out a roster to actually win championships.
Just quickly, Adam mentioned that he felt like the ownership with the Bears, the front office was important to him, and that he did feel like this was a good opportunity with Caleb Williams.
And it's really the best case scenario for Caleb Williams if he's actually going to become the star that his talent lends itself. I'll simply say this. The backbone of Ben Johnson's offense is the play action pass. Caleb, by QBR usage and completion percentage, was a bottom 3 play action pass quarterback last year. If this is going to work out for those two, he will have to make a massive jump in the execution of that.
Sources telling our Adam Schefter, and Schefter added that the leading candidate to become the defensive coordinator in Chicago is former Saints head coach Dennis Allen. So quarterback likely the top reason for Johnson to be hired there in Chicago as Caleb Williams enters year 2. And Johnson's work with Jared Goff certainly helped this case. Look at this. Goff had a 46 total QBR in his first year in Detroit. The year before Johnson took over as offensive coordinator, that improved to a 63 in Johnson's first year as OC, thanks in large part to limiting his sacks and getting easier throws with play action. Caleb Williams' QBR was 47 last year, so we'll see if Johnson can help turn around that the way that he helped turn around Goff. But Mina, let's talk about the Lions specifically as we zero in on them. Do you see any step back with them now that Ben Johnson will be gone? Also, Aaron Glenn likely to go somewhere as well.
More likely than not. And I don't want to place too much importance on the coach. The players are what made this offense sing, and most of the players remain. But he was a coordinator who had just a fantastic feel, not just for in-game adjustments, I thought, and matchups, but also finding ways to optimize and protect the quarterback. And you saw those limitations, I think, in the postseason loss. Jared Goff's mistakes are, frankly, the biggest reason why the Lions lost in this game. His sensitivity to pressure in particular, and those interceptions coming when he was pressing. So for the next coordinator of the Lions, you're going to call a very similar offense, Marcus, to the one we saw with Ben Johnson. Obviously, that emphasis on the run game and the play action off of that. But you have to continue to find ways to put this quarterback in the best situation possible, and that can be challenging in big moments.
MK, I'm 100% in agreement with you. I expect the scheme to stay very similar because of the personnel that you have. You can't deviate away from how dominant these guys can be up front. And even Jared Goff, with his timing and rhythm that he had for majority of the season. Obviously, we coming off of him having a 3-turnover game. But more importantly, I think Mina made the best point. Like, these games are a feel. It's momentum. At the time, do you make the right play call as opposed to just having the right play call on your sheet? Do you understand in the 2-minute coming in, obviously you're going to watch and go over all of the tape with these offensive guys, but do you already know what they're more comfortable with, or are you going to have to go through that growth period in those critical moments and situations in games? I thought Ben Johnson was also phenomenal at creating trick plays, and that's an element of Detroit's offense that won games for them, that got them back in the game. So how creative in those situations can the new OC be? It's going to be interesting to see how well they do with the absence of Ben, but the personnel leads me to believe that they'll be fine.
Yeah, Mina, they did deal with a ton of injuries defensively at key spots, one of them being Aiden Hutchinson, who, of course, will be back. But without Aaron Glenn, what do you foresee with that defense for the Lions?
Yeah, if Aaron Glenn was to leave, that would also be a really significant loss. You know, I saw him get some heat for this playoff game. I mean, he just ran out of humans, honestly. I hardly blame him for what we saw. Yeah. And I go back to the end of the regular season. They were playing so well despite the injury. So he's a tremendous coach. I think the return, though, of those players to health is going to sort of mitigate his loss to some degree, or at least we will see that pass rush look a lot more like it did when Aiden Hutchinson was getting after the quarterback.